side angle pose, one of my favorite poses. And in this pose, we want to make sure that we're doing certain movement patterns and certain actions in order to get the benefits of the pose, to stretch where we want to stretch and to strengthen where we want to strengthen. In our side angle pose, one thing that tends to get forgotten is the shifting of the pelvis. In Warrior Two, the hips are mostly level. It'll vary depending on your body, of course. There's no one right alignment, so it'll vary depending on what feels good for you, but they're mostly level. And then when we go into side angle pose, what sometimes happens is we side bend and we crunch into the side waist here to bring elbow to thigh or hand to mat. And instead, what we want to think about is shifting the pelvis. So if I shift my pelvis towards the back heel, I'm keeping both sides of my waist long, my spine long. Think about your tailbone and your pubic bone shifting towards the back heel. You can see the leveling of the hips shifts onto this diagonal. And a couple of things that happen here. One, it pulls my sits bone away from my knee on my supporting leg. That's going to stretch into the hamstring. The other thing is it keeps both sides of my waist long, spine long, so that my core is really activated to hold me up against gravity here. A side bend won't hurt your spine. Your spine does do a side bend, but by keeping that length, it helps to activate the core a little bit more and get us that strength building there. If you are having a challenge and you're side bending a lot or you can't shift the pelvis, that's okay. You don't have to shift a ton. Or take a different variation. Of course, elbow to thigh is a great variation. Hand onto block, and you can play with the different heights of the block to give you some support. For the top hand, lots of different variations. You can take it up towards the sky. Traditional in Ashtanga, it's reaching bicep by the ear, fingertips reaching away from the toe. And if you have this lengthening and the pelvis is shifting, you really want to think about lengthening from the tailbone through that back heel and through the crown of your head, creating that length. Another activation that sometimes gets forgotten is the activation of the front leg, gluteus maximus, your bum cheek. And what that muscle does is it turns out in your hip joint. It spins the inner thigh away from the midline, what's called external rotation in the hip joint. And when we're doing this pose, sometimes what tends to happen is we start to collapse the knee in, we internally rotate, and we pop the bum back, overarching in the lower back. By activating the gluteus maximus, what that muscle does, one action it does, is it spins the inner thigh up, this turning out or external rotation. When we activate the glute there, the inner thigh spins up, the outer thigh spins down. It helps to anchor the knee over the ankle, and it also helps to minimize that overarch of the popping the tailbone back. Helps to draw the tailbone down. If you activate that, we'll get some strengthening there, and then it'll also help us to get some more stretch in the groin or the inner thigh of the front leg. So give it a try. Let me know how it goes. I really am looking forward to your feedback.